What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Gedunk Podcast. Very excited. We got a lot going on. I'm here, as always, with Bobby. Bobby, how'd your Falcons do this weekend, man?
We lost on Sunday Night Football. You knew the answer to that before you asked the question. It was the most inept offense I think I've seen this team perform in the last year. And I've never seen a team that is so, what's the word I'm looking for? Schizophrenic. They have one personality.
They're very
they're inconsistent. They're young, but at the same time, I look at the Patriots. They're young too, and they're consistent because Vrabel
the Pats.
demands
I'll be
consistency.
honest, man, the Pats have the easiest schedule in the NFL. It has to be.
They do.
I think they don't play anybody with a winning record besides, I think, the Bills and then the Bucks, maybe, and then everybody else has a losing record. I'm pretty sure.
But you beat the teams you're supposed to beat.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think about? Did you follow any baseball, man? I mean, the Shohei performance was incredible.
It's the most insane athletic feat, I think, of our lifetime, and that's not an exaggeration. I think it is literally the single most ridiculous performance I've ever seen in my lifetime.
So if you guys don't know, right? So Shohei Ohtani plays for the Dodgers. I don't even know what his contract is. It's like $1 billion or something, but kind of seems to be worth the money, right? The dude hit 3 home runs. They were all over 400 feet. One he hit literally out of Dodger Stadium. And by the way, was also the starting pitcher of that game. And I think he pitched six
scoreless, 10 strikeouts.
2 hits. Great baseball, man. I mean, the sports in October are just the best. We're not going to talk. We could talk. Bobby and I could talk about sports all day. We're going to talk to you about what's going on in the world and sort of our take on it. But Bobby, government's been shut down for about 3 weeks, man. What's your take on that? How's that affecting Americans?
A couple of things. Everybody wants to talk about how they are the man and want to be the man until it's time to actually be the man. One of the things that I think in the last 20 years we have seen is this version of the GOP, post-Bush, is very, very good, and I mean excellent at raising hell and complaining. But they are very bad at governing. And what do I mean by that? The longest government shutdown in history under Trump's first administration. From what the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, is saying, we're probably going to break that record. Okay. And we're going to probably break the record. And what's interesting to me is how they're trying to frame it. This is the Democrat shutdown. Okay. Excuse me 1 second. You control the Oval Office, the executive branch. You control both chambers of the United States Congress. You have an unbelievably biased right-leaning Supreme Court and federal courts underneath it, thanks to Mitch McConnell holding up Barack Obama's appointments when he had the chance to appoint and make it more balanced. The entire government, to include the state houses, 35, something like that, are overwhelmingly Republican, GOP, okay? And what you're seeing is a shutdown of the actual federal government. You're seeing a destruction of the international trade market. You're seeing the falling apart of international alliances. You're seeing us basically picking a fight with a country in the same hemisphere of a perverse Monroe Doctrine nature. You're seeing all of these things that speak to incompetence at best, maliciousness at worst, by the overarching party and values that are in control, and that is President Donald John Trump's grand old party, aka the Republican Party. This is not functional.
They've got the votes, right? Like, they control the House, they control the Senate. They've got POTUS, and the government shut down. And the particular issue of the shutdown is the extension of health insurance, and the ACA, which is set to if left unchecked, right, it will approximately double the healthcare premiums for tens of millions of Americans. Probably about like 25 million Americans will see that their health insurance, right, will go from whatever it is, $1,000 a month to $2,000 a month. And that's in the context of, the already outrageous kind of home prices and consumer prices and things like that we've seen and we've been dealing with post COVID, on both sides, right? So that is coming on January 1st. And, the proximate cost of the shutdown is also temporarily kind of extending those credits. So it wouldn't even make it permanent, but it would extend it. And the Democrats have chosen that this is the fight that they want to have. This is an issue that they win on. People trust Democrats on healthcare a lot more than they trust the GOP, and I think with good reason. So we're starting to see some people on the GOP side, including some people that I think you'd all call the sort of ultra MAGA. Bobby, how is the congressional delegation from Georgia feeling about this?
Marjorie Taylor Greene, in the period of, I would literally say 90 days, has completely, unabashedly questioned her party in various aspects, but starting with the ACA. And the reason that she is doing this is because she has 3 children, 22, I want to say 22, 26, 28, something like that. They're aging out of Obamacare protections, and there is no extension forthcoming. They cannot afford health care. And she has also said the cost of living has directly affected them. So she has gone back to her district. And for people who don't know her district, it is North Georgia. It's the northwest corner of Georgia, the most rural area of the state in a lot of respects. And people are hurting there. I drove through there just the other week on my way to Tennessee, and I saw homeless people up there. When you pull off on an exit, which I'd never seen before up there. You have issues, and they have made it abundantly clear to her. Now, what's interesting is she is trying to walk a tightrope of not directly calling out the president, but she has made the political calculation to bash the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. She didn't want him anyway, right? But she's crushing him. And she is highlighting the fact that the reason the House is not in session is because Mike Johnson does not want to swear in the newly elected Democrat of a special election that will get them to 218 votes in the House. And the first thing that they're going to do is call for the release of all Epstein files. President Trump has told Mike Johnson not to allow it to happen. The thing is, it's a stall tactic. They're going to have to call Congress into session anyway. Now, he's trying to wrap it around, and this is where you got to look at the 3D chess that's being played. He's trying to wrap it around, saying that they're not going to come back to work until the Democrats stop the government shutdown, like it's the Democrats' fault, right, when they have the majority in Congress. And so he's thinking that the American public is too stupid to walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. No, these are two separate issues. Number one, and Marjorie Taylor Greene said this, not me, that congressional district elected representative, you need to swear her in so they can be represented. Completely agree. The fact that I'm completely agreeing with Marjorie Taylor Greene on a lot of things here recently is scary.
Wait, let's pause on this for a second. So let's come back to the point, but there's something interesting to talk about here. So first of all, mind blown, what the fuck kind of world are we living in where Marjorie Taylor Greene is the voice, the Jewish space laser?
Yes. Is the voice of reason, calm, and rationale. Yeah.
So here's my question to you. Is what's been happening with Marge, right. Think back to 2016, right? Trump gets elected and he's this bomb thrower. He's this firebrand. He hasn't had real power yet, and there was this thought, there was this hope I would say, that the office was going to, he was going to rise to the level of the office. Like he was going to be mature. He was going to, realize the importance of being the president, and he was going to take it seriously. He was going to listen to people. And that did not, I would argue that did not happen. Right. I think we'd agree that that did not happen in his first term, and it certainly did not happen in the 4 years he was away from power. And if anything, he's been much more unhinged in the second term. But it does happen as a phenomena to some people, and even people I generally disagree with. So, someone like Marge coming in and making what has to be a good faith argument on her part that we are failing our voters here and we're going to pay for it electorally. Why is that? Why are some people, especially someone as, who I've historically thought as Looney Tunes as Marjorie Taylor Greene, is able to make that maturation, and somebody, and other people are not, right? There's something there. Like what's going on with Marge that she's taking governance seriously, and Donald Trump, despite being POTUS for 5 years total, still not.
I think what's happening is you're seeing the breaking of the MAGA fever. That's one way to put this.
I mean, I hope so, right? But
well, here's the thing.
It's the dog that caught the truck, right?
Right. And because they've caught the truck, they don't know what to do with it. And more importantly, they see that they're ill-equipped to deal with the sheer force of the truck. Because in this movement to deny people who they think are not worthy of certain rights and entitlements, they did not realize that they would be coming along with that ride. That's what's happening here. It's one thing to vote to deport people. It's another thing to vote and say, yeah, they don't deserve health care or any social security or any benefits that we get. It's another thing to put people and vote for people who are just taking away the whole program. Now, all of a sudden, you're affected. And by the way, farmers of America, you didn't trust the brown lady that was running for president. But at the same time, the first Trump administration showed you that tariffs were going to come. Why did you think it was going to change this time? And here's the difference. You don't get the bailout right now, at least, because the government is shut down. And you know what's not shutting down? The bill collectors, the debt collectors, and the banks that have the deeds to your land. This is all self-inflicted based on the vote that you had made to go after and punish other people. Well, the thing about it is federal government is not something that deals with scalpels. They deal with sledgehammers, and they have taken sledgehammers, and you have been caught in the recoil. It is not my fault. It is not my problem to sit there and say, man, the farmers of America jacked up. This is what you voted for. Now, that being said,
it's true, right? Yeah. Sorry.
I'm just saying it's true. And if you notice, right, for example, I'll give you a perfect example of what happened. Like this weekend, the No Kings protest, 7 million, lots of people. Black folks were basically nowhere to be found, and it was noticed. And everybody's like, well, why not? And black people like, bro, we've been there, done that. We didn't cause this. Y'all broke it. You fix it. Black people purposely stayed home en masse to the point where on social media, people were upset with black people for not protesting. The unmitigated caucasity of it all is what I'm saying. But here's the thing. The reason black people have chosen to remove themselves from this is because black people as a collective, overall, recognize what was going to happen with an unchecked Trump term. What's happening is our Caucasian brothers and sisters are starting to figure out what we already knew. And to watch this process happen, Marjorie Taylor Greene is freaking out about the healthcare. Well, those of us who know history know healthcare being eliminated and limited has been happening because of black people since 1890 when they tried to give national health care for the first time, and they did not want black people in the South, newly freed slaves, to have it because there was a theory at that time that black people would die off if they did not have medical treatment. That goes all the way back to that. Look it up, people.
You ever see I forget where stand-up special it is. It's Dave Chappelle, and he's talking about who was the guy who faked the hate crime? Jussie Smollett.
Oh yeah, so Smollett. Yeah,
I don't really know how to pronounce his name.
Yeah,
but he does this bit, right, where he's like, everyone was saying this was a hate crime, and black people were silent about it, and he's like. Why weren't, there was a sort of public outcry, like, why aren't black people supporting Jussie Smollett? And he's like, you don't understand. We were supporting him with our silence because we knew this guy was full of shit. Right. And
bingo.
It's
bingo.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. Right. Like, I mean, that's sort of the thing with gun rights, right? The reason we had gun laws was because the Black Panthers started packing heat, back in the
1960s
in California, and a gentleman named Ronald Reagan was like, "Whoa, we gotta get some gun laws on the books."
Passed comprehensive gun legislation in the 1960s in California, and so black people, to be completely honest, in America, in America's history, have been the weather vane for what's actually happening in America. Always have been since the day we got here. The thing that's amazing to me in this situation is, this is not a racial thing per se. Don't get me wrong. Races have been targeted by the administration. But what's a bigger thing, though, there's a socioeconomic piece to this of the people being affected where, and I'm just going to be very blunt, white people's perception of what whiteness is does not have enough money to be counted as white by the current administration. What I mean by that is middle class and poor class whites.
Right?
Huh?
Marge's district is pretty poor, right?
Yes, it is.
For Georgia.
Right, it's extremely white, and out of all we got 14 districts in Georgia. I want to say it's like second from the bottom as far as average income, and it's also on the border of Alabama, specifically North Alabama, where the biggest job producer in that area of Alabama, and Alabama overall, but specifically North, is the federal government. And so the government shutdown is disproportionately affecting that section of Alabama, Marjorie's area of Georgia. The poorest areas in America that are red are the ones getting hammered by the government shutdown, hammered by the policies of getting rid of the Affordable Care Act, hammered by the reduction in government spending and supplemental supports like SNAP, food stamps, all that. It's affecting poor white people more than anybody else. But the power and the identity of whiteness and the racism attached to it, they were game for it initially. Now, all of a sudden, they're looking around and was like, this is costing a lot of money. Still not connecting the fact that the reason they voted for this in the first place was you wanted to hurt other people who did not look like you. Not connecting that, but seeing the result of it, and they don't like it, which is why you're seeing people slowly snap out of this.
I think that what you said is true. I also think that it's interesting to me that Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, right? And, was was liking stuff on Facebook about, hanging Obama back in the day, and, thought the Jewish space laser started the fires, and posts her like stupid ass CrossFit workouts of her in like the house basement. Like, she's crazy. She's a nut job, but she's rising to the moment in a way that Donald Trump is not. And that is interesting to me. And you're suggesting that maybe the fever's breaking, but I think it gets to this broader point of like so much of MAGA is just like smoke and mirrors, right? Like it's Trump is so good at getting the optics. Like I personally think his optics are stupid. Like I think gold and big red flags and, dumbass hats are not a good look, right? But he's able to, like, you say nothing else. The guy understands the optics, right? After the assassination attempt, he waited till the shooter's down, and then he's like, no, this is my moment to, pump
Yeah,
my
the
fist.
most unrealistic evacuation the Secret Service has ever done.
It was a good picture, right? It was a good picture for them. And he understands the optics, but I think that's all he understands, right? Like, I think he's like, if I fake it enough, people won't ask me about, my crypto scam, which I'm running, my side hustle crypto scam, which I'm taking, checks from the Qataris and all that stuff, right? But now we've come to a moment where what he's actually tried to do, Project 2025, is running up against the very real fact that a lot of people, white people, black people, poor people, middle class people, probably not rich people, depend on the federal government for various things. And so when you shut this shit down, you affect a lot more than people that in your head you've been programmed to dislike, right?
But Dan,
it's fucking smoke and mirrors, right? It's
no, it goes beyond smoke and mirrors. There's an irresponsibility factor to this. You're right about everything you said. The only thing is, I would even say rich people are affected, because here's the thing. The research dollars into medical research, cancer, this, that, and other, pandemic response. Hey, germs and disease do not discriminate. They will attack all of us. And here's the thing. You can be in your Ivy Castle, as we saw in COVID, and still get touched by stuff. We have gutted. I got 2 friends that work at the CDC, and they're doing DoorDash, dude. Freaking CDC doing DoorDash. And I'm just like, I'm in Atlanta where they're headquartered. It's serious. So the thing that's interesting to me is the reality of these policies are starting to hit. And we ain't even got to 26 yet, when in 2026, that one big, beautiful bill kicks in full earnest. Right. But you're already seeing the rural hospitals making preps to shut down, letting their communities know.
Dude, if you want to talk public health for a second, we haven't even hit respiratory season. So, the way we in the emergency department and in medicine broadly, the way we think of like the season, there's medical seasons. So, summertime is trauma season, right? That's when everybody gets their motorcycles out and they crash their motorcycle. And, the knuckleheads, it's hot, and they, school's out and they're stabbing each other and getting in fights, and people are jumping off of cliffs into lakes and breaking their neck and, all that stuff, right? So that's the summertime. In the wintertime, people get sick, right? So in the wintertime, you get your COVID, you get your flu, you get your pneumonias, all that sort of stuff. And we haven't even done a respiratory season with, this new CDC. I'll say this, though, my hospital, wouldn't give us COVID shots this year, right? Because, so historically, healthcare workers were kind of first in line. And historically, I mean, the last 4 years, right, to get our COVID shot. And, my hospital wasn't offering it this year. And they're still offering flu shots. So, I got my flu shot, but because it's not a CDC rec, there are insurance issues. Like, some people are not, their insurance won't pay for it, right? So if you're out in the community and you go to CVS, to get your COVID shot, some insurances will cover that and some will not. And so I think that we could have a pretty bad year respiratory wise with some of these complaints at the same time that we're jacking up people's health insurance and all this sort of stuff. It's
a bad combination, Dan.
They fail at governance. They just, they're just not good at, like, Ryan Holiday, Daily Stoic. By the way, we got to get okay. So I was back on it back in 2020, and Ryan's a great dude. Like, the way he's kind of spread stoicism to a new generation, I think is really admirable. And I like to think of myself as a stoic. So, but one thing he said on one of his podcasts that was very interesting. So he said, He said he was talking about writing. Like he was talking about, an editor or a reader who reads something you wrote. But what he said was, if somebody comes to you and tells you that there's a problem, they're almost always right. And when they tell you what to do about that problem, they're almost always wrong. And it's an interesting point of view when you unpack it, right? Because it's like, I see this every day in my job, right? So, whether it's patients or nurses or, whatever, right? Like somebody in a medical context will come to you and they'll say, "Hey, like my belly hurts." And, they'll say, "I need a full body MRI because, maybe this is cancer or something," right? And like, so they're able to identify the problem. As people, we're really good at identifying the problem. We're not very good at identifying what the answer is to that problem because that takes expertise. And so, if we're going to give MAGA, or let's just say, not even say MAGA, let's give the American people, the benefit of the doubt. Let's talk about the American electorate, right? They were able to identify the problem, right? They were able to identify that the cost of living was too high, inflation was too high, Joe Biden was fucking old as dirt and demented, but their solution was Donald Trump and MAGA, right? So, you know, you have to listen to the voters, and that's kind of what Marge is picking up on, right? Like she's listening to the voters in her district, and they're saying, "Hey, this is a problem. This government shutdown is affecting my way of life. It's affecting my bottom line. It's affecting my health, my literal health." And to her credit, she's like, "We got to come up with a way out of this." But it's interesting to think about, that from Ryan, that it's not, when somebody tells you you're fucked up, you should listen. And I think about this with the Democrats all the time, right? Because like Democrats, their popularity is in the toilet. It's like the lowest it's ever been. And people are like, "Hey, there's a problem. Hey, there's a problem. Hey, there's a problem." And, the solutions that people have come up with thus far are, inadequate, right? So I don't know, maybe the shutdown and, picking this fight on healthcare, which is something that everyone needs, maybe that's a step in the right direction. I don't know, but it's interesting to think that here we are, and we as a party and as an opposition have not picked a fight yet. We've just kind of rolled over and taken it. And here we're finally picking a fight.
It's amazing to me because the Democrats are continuously failing an open book test.
Yeah.
And it seems like the only people that understand that, the only people that understand that, Barney and AOC, and they have their flaws, but they understand why people are pissed. That's why they're getting so many people at their rallies, a lot of who are former GOP people, because the Democrats are so busy trying to cover all bases. They're like, since it's the World Series is about to start, they are literally trying to be a home run hitter when all they need to do is make contact right now because the fielding is so bad by the GOP. Just make contact. Just put the ball in play. They want to swing for the fences, right? And what's bothering me about it more so than anything else, they're not just swinging for the fences, failing to make contact. They are striking out consistently. They're not putting the ball in the play. I'll give you a perfect example. When Cory Booker did his, basically it wasn't technically a filibuster, but did his longest speech ever in the Senate, there was momentum right then and there that the Democrats could have latched on to and really started driving issues that are kitchen table based. I don't care if you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian, whatever. I don't care what your orientation. The cost of food on the table, the cost of gas in your tank, the cost of healthcare insurance for yourself. These are kitchen table issues that have universal appeal and universal worry. I ain't seen one ad about it. I haven't seen one thing put out by the Democrats about it. I've seen the Republicans try to justify and blame the previous administration for it. But here you have in the No Kings rally, I'll give you a perfect example, number 2 of what I'm talking about. The No Kings rally that just happened, great, massive turnout. Everything that they were bitching about, though, was about Trump's imperialistic ideology instead of, oh, and by the way, I can't afford to buy this week. Oh, by the way, I can't afford to send my kids to after school care because of this, and I can't go to work because of it. Imagine just for 1 second if half of the signs you saw at No Kings talked about that too. You see what I'm saying?
I'm interested. Let's explore this for a second. Do you think, because I fundamentally disagree, and I disagree because I think MAGA is not successful because of their economic policies, right? Like, and I don't think that the Democrats can just offer different financial fiscal solutions and be successful. I think it's a cultural thing. I think, and I wrote a Substack about this, but like, I think that, you know, people didn't go to Charlie Kirk rallies to hear his tax policies.
I agree.
They went to Charlie Kirk rallies because they approved of the things that he was saying culturally.
And I agree.
You know, many of those things, right? And I don't agree with those things, right? I'd imagine you don't agree with many of those things, right? But they were attracted to what he was saying because he was saying things like, let's deport these people. There's too many, you know, brown people in the country that, you know, they don't speak our language. They're not Americans. They're, you know, taking from us. Those are not economic issues, right? So I think that, you know, it's a red herring to say that the solution to MAGA is stuff like AOC and Bernie.
Well, here's my counter.
Well,
hold on. Go ahead. My counter to what the first part of what you're saying is everything you say would make sense to rational human beings. Here's the thing. The economic stuff is the gateway to breaking the fever. Because here's the thing that you say people turn out to watch Charlie Kirk talk about deporting brown people, black people suck, this, that, and the other, right? The suffering of the minority group in the United States of America has never moved it to do the right thing. It's had to been forced upon it. A civil war, a civil rights movement. So just because people are suffering, if the darker they are, the less America cares. Period. There's nobody in the comments, there's nobody in social media that's going to be able to change my mind on those historically well-documented facts, right? That being said, the thing that does appeal to that side that wants the brown and black people to be subjugated, removed, whatever, what have you, is their wallet, their pocketbook. And just like LBJ said, you can take the poorest white dude as long as they know they're better than the richest black, they're good to go. So using that thought process, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who had a family business that was given to her, passed down to her, her families feel the struggle. Okay. That is what snapped her into talking about this other stuff. The fact that black people and brown people, specifically brown people being deported, didn't move her one bit. Matter of fact, she was cool with it. But the second she went back to Dalton and Ringgold, Georgia, and Elbert County, Georgia, and all these other places and saw, oh my God, white people, and I'm saying it like this, white people are feeling the hurt of these policies. All of a sudden, we're starting to wake up. So I hear you, but I'm telling you what I see and I'm observing.
Like, I don't... You know, we're kind of doing the Ryan Holiday thing, right? Like we're agreeing on the problem, but we're not agreeing on
the solution. Right.
So,
right.
You know, I think you're arguing, correct me if I'm wrong, you're arguing that we can win elections, right?
Yes.
By appealing to people's pocketbooks, even if maybe they're culturally more attuned with MAGA.
Yes.
And that's slightly different than what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, the final defeat of MAGA requires us to address the culturalism. Like, yes, we can sneak Joe Biden into office because
this is great.
Everyone's fucking broke, right?
This is fascinating. And the reason I'm smiling is because what you're saying, in my humble opinion, right, has been proven and disproven at one point. So, for example, you can look at any economic metric and see that America as a whole did better financially under, Obama than they did Trump. And starting out with the second Trump term, Biden versus Trump. However, despite doing better, like you're saying, the cultural thing is so powerful that they voted Trump back in. What I'm saying to you, though, is part of the reason that Obama was elected in the first place, part of the reason Biden got elected in the first place was because people forget financially the country was in ruins when Obama came in, the 07. So to the point where white people who have never done this before were like, give the black guy a chance. Period. Dude, that's how bad their pocketbooks were hurting.
Check this out. Right? So that is true, and I would even take it one step further. Who got really hurt in the financial disaster in 2008? Well, it was the stock market.
Well, I was about to say the stock market, Lehman Brothers. I mean, you got to be more specific.
Fucking white people like me.
Oh, white people, yeah.
Middle class white people, our retirement, is in the stock market. Yes. And it kind of coincided with this shift of, Obama voters, right? Who were, right? So, like, you've got the Iraq War, huge moronic mistake, terribly unpopular by that point, certainly by 2008. And then the stock market crashes. And that was, I seem to remember, I'd have to look this up, so don't quote me on this, guys, but I seem to remember that George Bush was like the least popular president in modern times at that point, right? So, John, a pretty uphill road to climb, right? But I think that like 2008 and 2007, the way the market crashed, I think it affected the people who became part of Obama's coalition even more so than, rural, less affluent white people. That's
I would agree with that. But then here's the other piece of this, and this is part of my argument too. Once Obama, after 2 terms, straightened out the economy, we allowed such a cultural divergence. We call it in the black community the Obama tax. Trump was elected because of the recoil of electing the first black president. And the right was like, never again. And it wasn't the fact that Obama won. It's the fact that he won re-election convincingly. That was like, oh, how dare you? And so because economically, think about it, economy was growing, everything was great, and Obama turned over an economy that was booming to Donald Trump. Right now, I can afford to be racist, sexist, transphobic, everything and anything because I now have money in my pocket. It's easier to hate when you got your pockets fat. It's easier to hate. But then all of a sudden, when you don't have money and you're watching the people that help prop up your economy, i.e. the brown people in the fields, the brown people doing the work, being yanked away from you after years of service, dedicated, faithful, very diligent service. And now you can't keep your restaurant open, or you can't harvest your crops, or you can't operate your business. You can't operate construction. Now, all of a sudden, I can't afford to be racist because I need everybody to help me maintain my social status. That's what's happening. That's what's happening in Marjorie Taylor District. That's what's happening all over the country, to the point where the people that voted for this are feeling the pain because it's now directly affecting them. Meanwhile, in the black and brown communities, we've been trying to tell people this is how life is for us. Not being able to get, not being able to get the benefit of doubt from loans.
I agree with like, what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible in America? A serious question. Do you think it's
Yeah.
possible in this country right? There's always going to be like, the haves and the have-nots.
Yes,
Right.
I agree.
Do you think, even excluding that, 100 years from now, right? Like,
Yeah.
why is the African American population so largely like, the underclass, right? Like, do you think it's possible to change that?
I think it's possible to change it. I don't think America will do it anywhere in our lifetime. Here's a couple of reasons why. And now we're talking about thesis and stuff like that. But here's why. Because the system known as the United States of America, from its inception, was created to have a permanent underclass, right? That's the number one thing. Now, when they first started in the 1600s, it was going to be the underclass of Europe, the indentured servants of Europe, until they figured out how hard it was to farm here. And when they made the strategic decision to bring in those of African descent because they were climatized to here, that created the underpinnings. You can go online and see some of the estimates of unpaid labor adjusted for inflation that the black community is owed, right? The ADOS, the African descendants of slaves. If you were to take that, right, the black people would be not just middle class, they'd be upper middle class if their work was treated like every other white person in American history. Wasn't. And this is where I get very frustrated with my white friends who are meaning well but don't understand. Dude, they pass legislation and laws to keep us underclass. No other ethnicity in American history, in Western history actually, had to deal with that type of systemic racism where it was codified in the bylaws of the country. To the Constitution that I swore to defend and give my life for, I'm 3/5 of a person, to local legislation saying I cannot operate a business here, there, or another. Every turn. And then when we break away and historically do that, despite all that hindrance, it's literally burned to the ground. See Tulsa, see Rosewood, see Lake Lanier, I can go down the list, right? And so you got to understand the DNA. As great as it is to have the flowery words that we have, in actual practice, America, and that's why when I hear about people talking about reparations, I laugh. America will never give reparations. America will never do anything like that. It is the cost of doing business to establish the country was black subjugation and black persecution. That's fact.
100 years from now, though, why?
But 100 years from now, maybe, because again, there have been 26 generations of Americans since 1609. Me and you are in the first legally integrated generation. Our kids are in the second. Now, granted, after 100 years, a couple of things are going to happen. America is going to become more homogenized, as in it'll be less pure white as it's classified because it's just a made up construct, and more mixed race individuals. And as the world economy continues to become more integrated through the technology, AI, et cetera, lines of socioeconomics are going to become more blurred, right? Now, that still means you're running a race to which you started a 400-meter dash. Everybody else got a 300-meter head start on you. You may be able to close the gap, but will you be able to be on equal footing? Probably not in 100 years. I think it would take some type of radical deconstruction like World War III to have a hard reset. And the final piece of this, too, is why I don't think it will happen in our lifetime, but maybe in 100 years, I don't know, is that equality, actual equity to the privilege seems like oppression. And we see it every day in America. The white victimhood that is demonstrated by, especially on the right, is it tells me two things. One, you know nothing about American history. And number two, you don't understand just how privileged you are. If I hear another white man do the victimhood thing in America, an able-bodied, fully, fully having their mental capacities, white man talk about how hard it is for the white man in America. I may throw up.
Dude, I gotta be honest with you, man. I'm a straight white guy born
Huh.
in New England who
Yep.
in late 20th century America, and I feel like if I don't fucking hit a home run, like that's my own fault. Like that is like the winning hand.
Right. Be,
That
be,
is
because
a historic winning hand. There's
the
no way,
no.
like if that gets fucked up, it's because like I fucked it up, right? And like
And see, but you're a different generation. See, this is the thing. You're a different generation. Our generation X, I think, is the last of that mentality. I really do. Now, part of that's because our parents were like, "Hey, we're yuppies and we're going to do this. We'll leave you at home," and we had to be more independent. But I think you're hitting on something too. Generationally, too, that mindset changes. Like the greatest generation, they readily identified after World War II, man, we got some work to do here. This don't make no sense. Again, I tell people it's not a coincidence the civil rights movement happened after World War II. You cannot go fight against an idea and then come back home and basically live out its tenets. You can't do it.
were those guys, like the MLKs and the John Lewises and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Were there a lot of specifically WW2 veterans in that movement?
So yeah, in the civil rights movement, so MLK was too young to fight in World War II. He was born in 1929.
Yeah.
However, when you look at the leaders of the civil rights movement, they were a lot of draftees, that have been in service various points, not just to talk about World War II, but also to include Korea. And Korea is underrated as far as the social impact, because that was the first war America fought as an integrated military.
Oh yeah,
See,
and
that is key.
Korea was a dick dragger too, man. Like there were a lot of casualties. Like Korea,
dude, it was rough.
Yeah,
and we still don't give Korea the credit as far as the sacrifice and the intensity that it truly historically deserves in American history, in my humble opinion. My grandfather fought in Korea, right? Came back and became a perpetual drunk because of what he saw the rest of his life, right? But he was in an integrated unit, and part of having to fight a war and then adjust to this new social norm in those conditions. When you come back home and you live in Montgomery or outside Montgomery and you got to walk 5 miles because you can't ride on the bus because it's full, you're like, the hell with this. Think about it like this. If you were a World War II vet and you were drafted in World War II and you stayed until, say, 1953. So from 43 to 53, you gave 10 years in the Army. You fought two wars, one being a world war, and came back home to the Deep South and you were met with Jim Crow. Ain't happening, dog. Ain't happening. You're just like...
That was Mel Pender's story, right?
Yes,
I mean, we had him on.
exactly.
He was, he was like, I'm a fucking Olympian and been to Vietnam.
Yes.
Twice. Like what?
Yes. And come back and you're insulted. And so here's the thing, though. It's not just the blacks that came home and got into the civil rights. It was the white guys, and I say guys, that were receptive to that too. And I don't think they get the credit. Earl Warren, who was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court for Brown versus Board of Education, for Loving versus Virginia, all these things. These jokers understood we cannot sit there and hold ourselves as the paradigm of human society while we are proactively and legally prosecuting another group of people over something that they cannot help. That is fundamental too. So as great as the heroes of the civil rights movements are, the people like a Earl Warren, the people like a James E. Carter Jr., the president of the United States in the 70s, who was basically a Cold War vet, this and the other, who appointed more African Americans to Georgia's state government than anybody before him, right? That takes courage too. The reason why I have a little bit of hope, like you said, 100 years later, is because America has produced people like that. However, the loudest voices in the room, though, are the Stephen Millers and the Steve Bannons. That's why I'm skeptical.
There's military service, gives you kind of credibility, right? And people listen to you when you served in the military, and whether rightly or wrongly, that's just kind of a fact. And I think that I could not, I grew up, I don't think I met like a black dude until I went to the Naval Academy. I know I didn't meet like an Asian dude. I think there was one Jewish kid in my high school. It was all Irish Catholic white people. And the military really changed me, in that regard, right? Like I was like, these guys are, underneath the boat alongside me, right? Like we're on a foot patrol in Iraq together, right? Like you can't help but be changed by that. And I'm very suspicious of people who aren't changed by that. It's really something I can't get my head around to, have been standing the mid watch in the North Atlantic with 20-foot seas or whatever. And you're still mad because he's Asian, or, it really just doesn't make any sense to me. But
this is why I have a problem with your boy Hegseth, and I have a problem with Vance. Them two in particular. Well, here's why I say this is because, like you said, they wore the uniform, right?
Yeah.
Vance has been such a waffling person when it comes to this type of stuff. You can tell he's just about power.
I think if Trump dies, JD Vance is going to like run it back to the center and be like, "Hey, I was kidding the whole time."
Yep.
I think he's the phoniest fucking dude in Washington.
Dude, and Hegseth is kind of right there with him, where he's just trying to stay. He wants to stay in the limelight, but he doesn't want the sacrifice of leadership. He doesn't want the accountability, the weight of responsibility. Matter of fact, today, I'm looking at this article right here. The Washington Times just dropped this article. He lost us. Generals, senior officers say trust in Hegseth has evaporated. They are going and saying all of these things anonymously, of course, but they were like, hey, after Quantico, we're done. Like, all of these guys are saying this. You got Admiral Halsey, who left, as commanding officer of Southcom because of this stuff. And so the Washington Times was like, well, if he left, if he's the one in charge of this Venezuela stuff, how bad is it? So they started asking questions. And overwhelmingly, you have generals and admirals who are willing to say, yeah, we can't stand the guy. Let that marinate for a second. Me and we got people with different political views, personal political views in the military, but we're always aligned on mission. For these guys to sit there and say this to the Washington Times, of all places,
Times is not liberal.
No, they are pissed. And now he's trying to, lock out the press and all this other kind of stuff. Damn, we are living in an environment. And going back to kind of where we were talking about, is the fever breaking? Is this thing happening? Is Marjorie Taylor Greene indicative of? The answer is yes. Yes. Because when you put so many incompetent people because they're lackeys in positions of authority, there is a ripple effect, especially when you're talking about defense or law enforcement. Things that you can't get wrong. You have Kash Patel leading the goddamn FBI, Pam Bondi leading the Department of Justice, and Pete Hegseth leading the Department of Defense. The Three Stooges. The Three Stooges when it comes to qualifications, competency level, and trust. Can't do it.
It's weird. There's that too.
Say what?
But he also just looks weird.
Yeah.
He dresses in like leather pants and like does like, these fashion shoots. And Kash Patel is just a strange individual.
Yep.
But hey, Bobby, why don't we end there? That was a fun conversation, guys. Thanks for listening. Keep your, Bobby just hinted at it, but keep your eyes on the Caribbean. There's a lot going on there, as with the drone strikes and whatnot. And I think there will be a lot more events to come down there. So, hey, guys,
I think we're at the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. And we'll chat with you soon.
Thanks, guys.